Welcome, everybody. Elizabeth, first in the room. Congratulations, you get a golden star, a metaphorical golden star to stick on your heart. So thank you for joining us here on this Friday as we wind down the week and unwind the weekend into here now, where it all seems the same. So thank you all for joining. And again, we are blessed and honored to be sharing a Greg Braden module today from our Science of Self-Empowerment course, masterclass, that some of you I'm sure are enrolled in or have viewed and witnessed. So this is a longer module at 38 minutes. Greg really brings it here. So I invite everybody to relax and get out the popcorn, either physically or mentally. And feel free to type any comments or questions in chat that we can address afterwards. And we will have some time after this showing to discuss this module and to bring any insight and wisdom that gets brought forth. So without further ado, Garth is going to take it away. I'm not sure if there's...
Hello everyone, Greg Braden here, and I want to welcome you to Module 4 of the Science of Self-Empowerment. And in this module, I want to talk to you about intuition, not just any old kind of intuition. I want to talk to you about deep intuition, about intentional intuition. Here's what I mean by this. We all have experienced spontaneous intuition. It's when we have those intuitive insights seemingly out of nowhere when we least expect them. Maybe we're sitting at a traffic light, waiting for the light to turn from red to green. You don't know how long that's going to take, so you don't really want to start anything, and you're just kind of sitting there in limbo, not thinking about anything. And it's that no thinking that becomes the doorway to the deep states of intuition. All of a sudden, you have an insight into the meaning of life, and the origin of the universe, and the nature of existence, and you see your life purpose. And you see how that purpose is going to manifest, and all the people that are going to help you with it, and the new business you're going to create, and the spiritual implications of bringing ancient wisdom into the modern world. And then the light turns green, and you drive off, and you forget all of it. And you say, "Well, where did that go?" Or maybe you've had this happen. Before my mom became ill, as she is now, with she has advanced dementia, as I mentioned in the previous module. Before that happened, I used to be able to call my mom. I'd call her every Sunday from wherever I was in the world, just to check in, and say, "Hi, how are you doing? And this is what's happening with me." It didn't happen every time, but it was common that I would go to pick up the phone to call my mom, and she'd already be on the line before I even dialed the number. I know you all have experienced this before. Or I would dial the number, and her line was busy, and then I'd hang up and redial, and she would be there, and she'd say, "Greg, I was just calling you." And I'd say, "Well, I know I called you and your line was busy, so I hung up so we could get through." We take those things for granted sometimes. We call them synchronicities or spontaneous connections, whatever you'd like to call them. But what really happens in the moments where we have those connections? You think about it. If, for example, me going to call my mom, if I had deviated even a second or two, if I had stopped to get a glass of water on the way to the phone, or I went to close a door for privacy on the way to the phone, I would have missed that precise timing. What is it that happens between two people, sometimes separated by a half of a planet on another continent, separated by oceans? What happens in that instant in time? What is the impetus for us to go and pick up the phone at the exact moment, that precise moment we do, and the other person is there? That is our intuition. And when it happens, you say, that's really cool. My mom used to laugh about this. She called it ESP. So, you know, she and I'd be on the phone, nobody else listening, and she was still whispering to me because ESP was something not to be talked about in our community when I was growing up. So we'd make this connection, and she'd laugh and she'd say, "See, Greg, you know, we've got the ESP," and she just got the biggest kick out of that. What is it that happens between two people that establishes that kind of link? And when it happens spontaneously, and you say, you know, that was really cool, can I do it again? How do we create those deep instances of intuition when we need them the most? And I'm going to invite you to think about this. Most viewers, if you're watching this, you probably have a spiritual practice, probably have a certain time of day that you do this. Often people do it first thing in the morning or last thing before they go to bed at night, when the kids are fed and the pets are taken care of and the clothes are ironed and the bills are paid and lunches are packed, and you go to a special room in the house and you close the door and you roll out the yoga mat and you light the candle, you burn the incense and you sound the chimes, and you put on a track one of Stephen Halpern's Higher Ground CD, and you say, okay, now I'm ready for my meditation, or I'm ready for my intuitive exercise. The point here is that when we most need the intuition, typically is when the conditions least support that kind of intuition. When we most need, we need to make those split-second decisions, or when something happens to us in our lives and we have no one to turn to. You can't Google the answer. I have friends going through this right now. One friend in particular is being diagnosed with a life-threatening condition. Everyone is giving my friend advice, and every piece of the advice is different, and he is inundated. He's overwhelmed. His parents are in fear. So his parents are saying, go the medical route, you know, and go chemo and radiation. His friends, his new age friends, are saying, you know, heal holistically. You can heal holistically. Use this herb, you know, eat this mushroom, wear this crystal, say this prayer, go see John of God, you know, whatever it is that they're doing. Other friends are saying, you know, maybe try prayer. And he called me and said, Greg, what should I do? And I said, if I answered you, I would be among those people who are inundating you with information. And the truth is, I don't have the answer. No one does. And that's the point. When we find ourselves in a place in our lives, and all of us will at some point, where we're faced with a decision, we're faced with a choice, and we have no point of reference, no books to go to, no internet sites, no friends, no family, no higher power necessarily that's going to intervene, where do we go for the answers? And what I want to say to you is you always have a place where those answers reside for you only, not for anyone else. There's always a place where those answers reside for you, and that's what I want to talk about. Deep intuition. We spoke in segment 2, module 2, about heart-brain coherence and the fact that our heart now is recognized to have these 40,000 specialized cells, sensory neurites, that think, feel, and remember independently of the neurons in the cranial brain. So they have their own memory, their own language. Our ability to access these, the heart that feels, that thinks, that remembers independently of the brain, our ability to access this is called heart intelligence. And I know my friends from the Institute of Heart Math are going to use this term and talk about it a lot in this series. And I want to honor the principles they're sharing and introduce some of the concepts from my perspective. They will introduce them from their perspectives as well. And we're talking using the same language, heart intelligence. Heart intelligence, it's different than thinking with the brain. Heart intelligence is really fast. Let me just stop and ask a question, as if you could answer me. Why would you imagine that the heart could answer your intuitive questions much faster than the brain? Okay, to even think about it, you've got to think about it. All right, why would the heart answer so much faster? Here's one of the reasons why. Is because when the brain answers a question, the brain goes through the loops of logic and ego and fear. So the brain goes through the loops of self-doubt, self-esteem, all of the reasons, all of the voices from all the people who have ever told us that we weren't worthy or we did not know the answers. Your ego and your brain will loop through all of those, and it slows down the process and often will skew the answer. Your heart doesn't do any of that. Your heart often will answer you before you even finish formulating the question. And I know that you know what I mean. It's fast because there are no ego filters. Part of my heritage, my blood heritage, is Southeastern Cherokee, from Southern Missouri and northeastern Oklahoma. And in the Cherokee tradition, there's actually a word that doesn't exist in the English. There's no equivalent for this word in the English language. And the word in Cherokee is Shante Ishta. And I've written it on the screen so you can see what this is. Shante Ishta, it literally means the single eye of the heart. The eye that sees what is without judging it as right, wrong, good, or bad, that simply knows what is and what is true for you without the filters of the judgment. It's one of the most powerful tools that you can awaken in your life. This segment is going to be a little bit longer than the others, and I'm just realizing that because I'm going to share with you a story that I hadn't planned on sharing. But for me, it was the pivotal turning point of how powerful the intuition can be in my life. There was a time in my life, I come from a very dysfunctional alcoholic family. My father left. It was an abusive family. And my younger brother, my mother, and I got the bad end of that abuse. My father left when I was 10. I went through some really difficult times. And there was a period in my life during these times of difficulty, I'd always been taught to judge good and bad and light and dark. And I talked about this a little bit earlier in some of the other programs. Where do you draw the line between light and dark? And the moment you draw that line, you've fallen into the ancient trap that keeps us stuck in the polarity of what separates us from what's good and true in this world. We could not live in a world that did not have both light and dark, because it's the tension of those polarities that creates this three-dimensional experience. It's the tension between the positive and negative, between the proton and electron for the neutron, or the male and female, it's the child, or the heaven and below that becomes the earth, the triad that we see in so many different traditions. So I was having a difficult time in my life, and I was having a dream, not every night, but it was a frequent dream, where I would go in, lie down to go to sleep, and in my dream, I would be standing alone in a dark place, looking across a chasm, and off in the distance, I could see the face of people that I loved. Some people I recognized, some I'd never seen before. And every time that I tried to walk from my place to the people that I loved and cared about, I had to cross this chasm. And on one side of the chasm was the darkest of the dark, and on the other side was the lightest of the light. And my training had taught me to judge the light and the dark. And every time I began to walk to the people I love, the light would pull me one way and the darkness would pull me the other way, and I would fall off the path and I could never reach the people that I love. I was going through a spiritual training at the time that was teaching me about Shante Ishta, the single eye of the heart. It discerns, it recognizes the light and the dark, but it doesn't judge the light and the dark. And this is an important distinction. You can recognize something without judging that something. And that teaching in my conscious life apparently filtered into my dream state, because one night I had the dream, but I did something different in the dream. And here's what I did. I began as usual by myself on one side. Everyone that I loved and held dear was on the other side of the chasm. This time, however, I began to walk across that chasm. And when the lightest of the light and the darkest of the dark appeared, I didn't judge them. I honored both of them. I allowed them their existence in my life without judging one as good or bad or right or wrong. And the moment that I did that, the most beautiful thing happened. The dark and the light that I no longer judged came together and became the bridge that carried me to everyone that I love and hold dear. And that is the power of Shante Ishta. It's the power of being able to see through the heart, through your heart, what's true for you, discerning without judging the rightness or the wrongness of that something. And this is something that's available to all of us in states of deep intuition. So that's what I want to talk to you about right now. What is intuition, and how do you know, what's the difference between intuition and instinct? It's a very powerful question. It's a question that comes to me a lot. in workshops and live events. So let's make a distinction between intuition and instinct, and then let's talk about how we access that deep intuition, all right? Intuition can be defined as a direct knowing, okay? It comes from sensual cues in the world. So these are things through the sensual body, through conscious and subconscious perceptions. It's not based upon reasoning. Intuition does not come from the logic and from the reasoning. It is an assessment. This is very powerful. Our subconscious mind functions much faster than our conscious mind. Our subconscious mind processes information so much faster for the reasons that I shared just moments ago. So it's a subconscious assessment, a fast assessment that includes everything. It includes past experiences. It includes street smarts, is what we call it, personal experience, as well as instinct. All of this comes together in the mix for intuition. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of this in just a minute. Instinct is a hardwired response in the subconscious. It's also very, very fast, but it's a response that may be from experience that are not ours personally, but collectively. Here's what I mean by that. Unfortunately, throughout most of history, it has been true that if you're a woman and you're in a strange city, and you're walking down a dark street late at night in an unfamiliar place, it has typically not been a safe thing to do. Okay, it's a sad statement to make, and it is, and for men as well, but even more so for women who have been vulnerable in the past. So there is almost a universal sense, it's wired into our psyche, that when we see a dark alley, in a strange town late at night, that it may not be a safe place to go. Or if we have a choice between walking down a dark street and a lighted street, we'll typically take the lighted street because our instinct tells us it's probably a safer thing to do, all right? Now, that doesn't mean that you personally have had a bad experience. Maybe you have, but it doesn't mean that you have had a bad experience. It's just you have a feeling that a bad experience could happen. That is it's hardwired into our psychology from those who have come before us. And this is an example of an instinct. It's an instinctual response. It may not make sense in the present moment. It's just an instinct. So this is where intuition and instinct, where the distinction comes in. It's nature's way of informing us quickly in terms of how to react. It's based upon past experience, ours and others collectively. Now, there are places where there are exceptions to instinct. So for example, if I'm in another city and I'm speaking at a conference and I go out for dinner and I come back from dinner and now it's gotten dark, I'm in a strange place, I'm not familiar with the place, and I know that my hotel is only a block away and I can walk all the way around that block to stay in the street lights, or there's a shortcut that'll take me through, but it's not lit so well. My instinct typically would tell me to take the long way and stay in the light. However, my intuition may override my instinct and say, you know, normally I would agree to stay in the light, but in this circumstance, I'm in a good part of town. I can actually see my hotel on the other end of this alley. There's no one in the alley right now. And I feel that the vibe just feels like it's an okay thing to do. So my intuition is overriding my instinct. My intuition says, yeah, you know, the instinct is good sometimes, but in this circumstance, this seems to be the way to go. So I've made that distinction now. I hope that's clear between instinct and intuition. So instincts typically don't take into account personal knowledge, and that's what I did just now. This all leads to discovery number 7, the ability to both speak to and listen with heart intelligence, those 40,000 specialized cells in the heart. So the question we ask ourselves, are we good listeners? When we listen to another person, we say to that person, hey, I'm all ears. I love this image. We say we're all ears. Are we really present listening to the other person? Are we really present and available to them? Or are we already formulating what we think we're going to say in response to what we believe they are hearing? It's a very, very powerful question to ask yourself. Are you a good listener when it comes to others? Here's where it gets important for intuition. Are you a good listener when it comes to yourself? When you ask your heart a question, are you already forming the answer that your ego wants you to hear, or are you truly listening to what your heart intelligence, what those 40,000 specialized cells, what Shante Ishta is saying to you? So there are very specific blocks to becoming a good listener, and I've just mentioned one of them now. One of the biggest blocks is assuming that we know the direction of where another person is going, or the answer to what they're talking about before they even finished what they're saying to us. How many of us do that, consciously and subconsciously? We do it without even thinking about it. We're busy formulating our response while the other person is still describing the issue or their concern, or whatever it is that they want to talk to us about. How many of us use diversions or distractions? Someone else is talking to us, and all of a sudden we pick up the cell phone and we check for a text message, or we look to see what time it is. Or, I mean, it's very innocent, but how often we do these things? These are blocks to becoming a good listener. How often do we judge what the other person is saying through our facial expressions or our body language? If they're describing, I just had a friend that had this experience. In a long-term marriage, and I'm not going to use any names, their partner was describing a desire to explore aspects of the marriage they'd never explored before. And the man that was hearing his wife describe this found himself in closed body positions. He's doing this, and he's got facial expressions that are telling her he doesn't approve before she even finishes what it is she's saying. And that's impacting her ability to trust and her ability to share openly what she's feeling. So these are all examples of things that block us from being good listeners. Interrupting the person that's talking, trying to complete their sentences, or helping them to find words, putting words in their mouths, essentially, is what we're doing. These are all different blocks. So when we listen from the heart, one of the techniques that the Institute of Heart Math shares is the ability to listen from our heart. Coherent communication is what this is called. You already have the tools to do it. It's just about a different application. So to accomplish a coherent communication, you go through the steps that you've already learned. You shift your awareness from your mind into your heart. Number one, you focus in the heart, begin to breathe a little slower, and you listen for the essence of what the other person is saying with genuine interest. And because you're in coherence, you're in a much better place to do that. You're much more balanced. Remember, this is heart-brain harmony. You listen for the essence of what they're saying, and when they have spoken their piece, then you speak back and you confirm what it is, the essence, maybe not the specifics, but the essence of what you believe you've just heard. And this way you can then reverse the roles and do the same thing. If you've never done this before, I'm going to invite you to try this on your own. Just a little exercise. Find a partner to work with. Be a friend, a coworker, sibling, a life partner. Find a partner to do this, and do a 2-minute exercise. So 2 minutes where one of you becomes the listener, listening from your heart after you've gone through heart-brain coherence. The other one for 2 minutes is sharing the essence of something that's important to them in their lives. Something they've experienced, or a goal, or a dream, or a desire, or a frustration if it's happening at work or in life. And then take 1 minute to reaffirm or confirm with them the essence of what you've heard, and then reverse the roles. And I think you'll be amazed, as I have been, at how much communication typically is lost, and we're not even aware of it. Statistics show that we sometimes only catch between 70 and 80% of the communication that another person is saying. And that's why you can say something to someone, and immediately when you finish, they'll ask you a question about what you just said. And you'll say, didn't you hear what I was saying? They heard it, but they weren't listening. Okay, so their ears heard the vibrations, but their cognition did not allow the meaning to penetrate into the essence of the experience. And this is where the heart-brain harmony really comes in. All right, so this is important. It's a really interesting exercise. I'm going to invite you, try it at least once with someone that you trust. But where this becomes important is when you're listening to the conversation coming from your own heart. Are you a good listener for what your heart is saying to you? I am a huge Rumi fan, and I love the work of Rumi. I've worked with Coleman Barks in the past that translated some of Rumi's works. I have tremendous respect for the man and his work. He helped me. He opened the doors. Coleman Barks opened the doors to deeper understandings of Rumi for me at a very, very important time in my life. So what Rumi says is, without thinking of the letters, listen to the language of the heart. Okay, now I love this. He's saying, don't overwork it. Don't try to analyze, but listen to what the essence of what the heart is saying. So this is where deep intuition comes in. When we have conversations with our heart, when we are accessing Shanta Ishta, there are principles that will help us to ask when we communicate with the heart, asking questions, and when we listen back. All right, I'm going to go through these very quickly. When you ask your heart a question, typically you want to be very brief, very concise. Your heart doesn't need a preamble. You don't have to give your heart the introduction to justify what it is that you're about to ask. Your heart already knows all that stuff. So be brief. Ask your heart a question in a single, concise sentence or a phrase, a brief phrase. Ask in a way that your heart can answer. All right, and if you don't know how to ask, you can tell your heart, say, I don't know exactly how to word this, but this is my concern, this is my feeling, this is my experience. And open this dialogue with your heart. Be direct, be concise, always be personal. Your heart cannot answer you about your friend's problems, or about your husband or your wife's problems, or your partner, or your sibling, or your children's. Your heart can speculate, but your heart only knows what's true for you. Your heart also doesn't know about regional laws. It doesn't know about federal laws. It doesn't know any of these things. So you have to temper what your heart says to you with common sense for the environment that you live in. But the power of the heart is your heart will always tell you what is true for you. So you have that as a point of reference. You've got that as an anchor when it comes to making big decisions about health, relationship, jobs, career, whatever it is. All right? So when you ask your heart, this is the way. Brief, concise, single sentence, be personal. When your heart responds, it will usually respond in a very similar way. Your heart generally will respond briefly, directly, and concisely. It'll be fast. Don't be surprised if your heart answers you before you finish asking the question in your mind, because your heart's much faster than your mind. All right, don't be surprised if that happens. The answers will always be objective. The answers will never judge from your heart. If you're receiving information that tells you to judge the rightness or the wrongness or the goodness or the badness, discernment, yes, but to judge, there's a possibility that that information is not coming from your heart. Now, I don't know where it is coming from. That's for you to ask. Is it coming from your ego? Is it coming from the voice of your caregivers from when you were 3 years old, trying to tell you what's right or wrong or good or bad? Is it your fear? I don't know. But your heart will never be judgmental when it's asking the question, and the answers are always going to feel right. They'll feel right to you, okay? Your heart will never ask you to do something that's dangerous for you. And if you hear a voice that is asking you to do something like that, your job is to find out where that voice is coming from. I can't tell you, I have people come to me all the time at workshops. They send me emails. They say, I was told to do this or that. I was told to share this with you. And when I ask them, who were you told by? Where did the voice come from? 9 times out of 10, people say, I don't know. And I'll say, you want me to act on something that you received, not my guidance, your guidance, and you don't even know where that guidance came from. So, when you begin to think about these things, we owe it to ourselves to know where our guidance is coming from. And there's nothing wrong with asking. And if you are powerful enough to receive the guidance or a dream, people ask me to interpret dreams all the time. I can't interpret your dream, and no one else can either. They can speculate what the symbols may mean in general terms, but only you can interpret your dream. If you're powerful enough to bring in that dream, then you're powerful enough to go back and ask, what is the purpose of what I've been shown? Why am I seeing these things? What am I supposed to do with these things? What is the meaning of these things? Now, some people that don't like that, some people that want others to validate them through sharing the dream. And that's another course, that's another workshop. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, good, or bad. It's just different than what we're doing here. I'm talking to you about personal power and personal empowerment. And one of the highest states of personal mastery is for you to be able to interpret your own experiences without asking someone else what those experiences mean, because they're your experiences. So when we go to have these kinds of experiences, I think direct experience is the best way to do this. So what I'd like to do in just the brief time that we have left in this module, let's do a little exercise in heart intuition, heart intelligence. And the way that we begin these exercises is what you've already done. The 3 steps: you shift your awareness from your mind into your heart. You begin to breathe a little slower, telling your body that you're in a place that's safe. And you establish the connection between the heart and the brain, the coherence through emotions and feelings: gratitude, appreciation, care, compassion. So let's do this. And remember, I said, once we achieve that state, that's not the end. That's the doorway. That's the beginning. And we get to choose what we do with that. And in this instance, we're going to use that doorway to ask our heart a question. And I will formulate a question and invite you to ask your heart this question in just a moment. So I'm going to invite you to do what we have done in the past. You already know how to do this. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, put your pencil down. You're not going to need to look at the computer anymore for a few minutes, just a couple of minutes. I'm going to do the same thing. Allow your awareness to move from your mind into your heart. And if it helps to gently touch that heart center, this is a good time to do that. Allow your awareness to go to the place where you feel that touch. From that place, begin to breathe a little slower. I'm inviting you to breathe a little slower, as if your breath is coming from the place where you feel the touch. Maybe 5 seconds on the inhale, 5 seconds on the release. And this is the place, to the best of your ability, where you establish the feeling of gratitude, care, appreciation, compassion. Gratitude always works for me. And as you establish that link, what does your body feel like? Do you feel a warmth in your body or a tingling? Are there any images that flash into your mind? Do you feel tears? Sometimes just making the connection, people begin to feel tears. Powerful emotions. It's just your body acknowledging the connection. And as you feel those feelings, hold the focus in your heart. All right, now this part of the exercise, this could be complete in and of itself, and you would activate the things that we talked about before, the immune response, the longevity enzymes, 1,300 biochemical reactions, or now we can go one step further. And from this place, this is the place to ask your heart the question. And what I've found is you can ask your heart by addressing your heart specifically with the words, my heart. So you begin the question, my heart. And the question I'm going to invite you to ask your heart right now, my heart, what is it that you want me to know in this moment? My heart. What is it that you want me to know in this moment? How does your heart respond? Should it happen quickly? Do you have a feeling? Do you hear words? See an image in your mind? We all work differently, and our heart communicates with our bodies in different ways. Sometimes it's a tingling, it's a warmth. Sometimes it's a feeling of contraction or a feeling of expansion, depending upon the answer. My heart, what is it you want me to know in this moment? And as you receive that answer, I'm going to invite you to inhale. And as you release, anchor that answer so that you can remember it when we finish this exercise. Anchor the answer. Gently begin to open your eyes. Using heart intelligence, it's like using a muscle. And the more you use it, the easier it becomes, the more it becomes second nature to do this. And what I've found in my experience is that this tool that I'm sharing with you, heart intelligence, personally, it's one of the most powerful tools that I ever realized and developed. I use it almost on a daily basis. I've used it in times of crisis. I used it over 9/11 when I was in another country, had to make decisions about what airplane to get onto, and I was being pulled from different perspectives out of fear that other people had. I've used it for healthcare choices for myself, often flying in the face of what my friends, family, and my doctors wanted me to do. But what I know is this: when you need personal answers to a personal question, your heart will always be there for you. You're never alone in that respect. Heart intelligence, when you need personal answers to a personal question or for a personal experience. So with that, I'm going to bring this module to a close. I appreciate you allowing me to share this with you. Again, I've gone a little longer than I thought we would in this module, but I wanted to share these things with you through this medium and the opportunity that we have. So stay tuned. I look forward to exploring another facet of personal empowerment, of self-regulation in our next module of the science of self-regulation. Until then, take good care.
Amen, Greg. Thank you, brother, for sharing this with us. Now, I know there's a bunch in this module that we can share, and I invite us to perhaps anybody that wants to come on and share or type in chat what you're feeling or what feelings this evokes. Feel free to use the raise hand. Go into participants, then you can raise hand, or it should be just an option to raise hand, and we could pull you on to discuss. In particular, I'm not sure if our co-host Karen is here, but we had a pretty nice exercise here, and Greg invited us to go within and ask a question and see what our heart is telling us. So I guess I invite us to come on and share this. Seems to be the reasonable thing to share. What is our heart calling us to do when we quiet ourselves and breathe slowly and turn off senses and thought and ask our heart, what is it that you want me to know? What were some answers that came through? And I'm happy to start us off, so I'm not putting anybody on the spot here. I know when I ask this, in this practice with Greg and with everybody here, first of all, there's a series of seemingly, minor issues, what should I do? Should I go here? Yes. And I think I should be doing this? Yes. And so forth? Yes. And then there's this general greater sense of all is on plan, that all of the things that we're focused upon now, some we would say are minor, some are major. And even if some seem so major, it's still minor. And more importantly, the most important out of all of this is that all of this is right on plan. And we don't have to worry about messing this up because this is just our perfect experience. And so I know we have at least somebody with a hand raised. Karen, what were your thoughts on watching this module, and did you get an answer from your heart?
I did. I had a rather loud answer because I'm still in the middle of my workday and I was multitasking. And and then I stopped while Greg was doing the exercise. And what came to me loud and clear was, Karen, slow down, slow down. Because sometimes I just get to moving really fast and I can rationalize, that with all kinds of reasons why I do that. But sometimes when I move too quickly, I might be abrupt, or I might not be fully kind as I would like to be. It's more just about getting it done. And so that message came to me very clearly, and I really appreciated it popping in the way it did.
And I wonder, Karen, if you would mind expanding, what does it mean to slow down? You say you're going quickly. What does quickly mean, and how does this?
Quickly means, well, in the workday especially, quickly means that I'm doing one thing and then I get pulled a little bit sideways from a message from somebody, and I want to respond to that quickly. And so I respond really quickly. And sometimes in the doing of that, maybe I'll cut and paste something and drop something in, but I won't even pause and think about what might that look like to somebody on the receiving end. And then when I get past that moment and I look at it and I think, oh, well, that was a little abrupt, or maybe I should have deleted that part of it or worded it differently, which to me translates into just making sure that I'm always fully kind, always slowing down enough so that kindness is a priority and not expediency. That happens with me a lot. I can get to moving quickly just to mark it off the list.
And what's interesting is, as you share, it seems like actually slowing down allows us to move more quickly because we don't have to backtrack and circle back. So it's interesting to think of slowing down as actually a quickening, and it's rather than an expedience. I like how you brought in expedience.
And I like what you brought in too, because that is true, because I'm expending quite a bit of mental effort right now in backtracking and thinking, oh, I wish I would have done that differently, or I'll do that differently next time. Right?
Well, good thing there's only one time, which is here.
And then the other part of that is that's the experience. That's what's happening right now. That's the mental activity and the heart feeling about, what happened. And then there's that idea of all unplanned. So there's nothing wrong with any of it at the same time. Great paradox.
Of course. It's kind of like all is unplanned, so we might as well just kind of walk along gingerly and skip maybe when we're called to. But no sense in going in a mad dash if we don't feel compelled.
No.
We have a Sue Ann on here, and I'll ask you to unmute yourself if you'd like to share, Sue Ann. You'll just have to press a little button that says mute. So there we go. We can hear you. So what do you feel compelled to share, Sue Ann?
Well, it's just, I like the process that it was very simple questions. I like the process that there is just the heart will answer simply. And I asked, what do you want me to know right now in this moment? And the answer was, you're beautiful. And I got it in the sense of not just the physical beauty, the energy being the actual essence of what I am. And to know that, because it isn't always something I'm in touch with, to know my own inner beauty of what I am. And it's hard to say it without sounding cliche. And that's pretty much, it was simple, and that was the first thing that came through, and it was very heartwarming to have that sense that this is what I want you to know, and to really get in touch with the inner beauty.
Beautiful. And what's interesting is, what comes to mind with this is kind of like, an orange, we can see the surface of the orange, but we don't quite know what's inside. So the inner beauty is, but we don't purchase an orange for the skin, you know, we purchase it for the what's inside. So that inner beauty is just so much more realer than any surface attribute that we can fix. And it's also interesting that I think, as you're bringing in here, and as Greg presents this, that we're speaking with our heart, almost as if it's another entity, when really it's our true self giving us this answer. So
that's again the beauty of it. It's the fact that we have it readily available. It's so simple. It's so easy. It's very quick, and just having that opportunity to remember this is always available for us. And I like the way he went on to say, you know, people want to validate, or we want to be validated and ask other people, and it's that trusting of what we really are ourselves, and we have the answers. So I thought that was part of what it was, and I really enjoyed that.
yes, me too. And just some of the notes I took from this, you know, first of all, how he calls it conversations with your heart. I'm sure we're all familiar with conversations with God, and it's really pretty much the same thing. Conversations with your heart. It's just a nice way to think about it. You just sit and reflect internally and have a conversation with your heart. I also like the quote. He said, "Your heart doesn't need a preamble."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Right to the point. Yeah. Thank you, Joanne. And I invite anybody, clearly, who wants to share, just feel free to raise your hand and type something in chat. This is our time together, just to share in this sacred space, in this truth. We have a William here. Let's promote William. And one extension of this concept of your heart doesn't need a preamble. I know. I think alongside this notion, this concept of being concise, I think there is a time, well, I know there is sometimes, as he said, we don't even know what to ask. And so the preamble may be seen as a way of sifting through our own thoughts into refining our question. So I'd even so much say that don't worry about the preamble. Just speak whatever we need to speak. Just whatever is on the mind. You can speak it aloud, speak it with somebody else, or just speak it internally. But speak it as much as wants to come out. Just don't even try and think about what you're saying. Just let it all come out. And at the end, a question will form. A simple, concise question. And then this is after everything is out and the dust is out, then we can ask and reflect on this question. So we have a William here.
Okay,
hello,
can
William.
I hear something? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, because I'm still new to this. It's the first time I'm speaking when I'm in a group involved with you.
I
But
know it. We've
anyway,
seen each other many times, so thank you for coming on.
What I want to share is I'm new to this information, and I have a habit of not being trusting. And when I put my hand on my heart and I participated in this exercise, what flashed through my, I guess, I don't know if it's through my head or my heart, but what flashed immediately was trust. Have trust. So in other words, if I'm speaking to myself or my higher self, I have to believe that I am speaking to my higher self and I am being informed the correct information without the filters and without having to worry, is this accurate or is this not accurate? Because sometimes we try immediately to analyze what's coming in. And the feeling real fast came in to trust. I just want to share that.
That's really beautiful. I remember one of the things that Greg said was that the heart will never be judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And the mind so often is, not always, so often is. And so we can tell the difference, can't we, William? How it feels.
Yes, yes, absolutely. But anyway, we're ego dominated. And the ego always wants to doubt. And so anyway, the trust came, it flashed.
Absolutely. So well, it seems like it's here to stay, William. That's how I see it.
I hope so.
Well, also, I'd like to extend this dialogue, this conversation, William, because this is I mean, this is fully important here. Trust, and Greg Brett kind of talks about the difference between judgment and discernment, and trust clearly is embodied in trust in all of everything. Now, there is this concept of being naive where we can be too trusting, but really, if we understand trust, we know that we can't be more than fully trusting. You can't be too trusting. And so there are times when we're presented with somebody or some situation where our inner self is saying, no thanks. And so it's not that we have to trust everybody and everybody that asks us to do something and every situation where we're asked to do something. It's a matter of trusting ourselves, being in tune with ourselves so we can trust what we're being told to do. So this is the trust, and who better, William, to trust than your full self? You know, who knows every bit about who you are and where you're headed and where you've been. So we can trust. I can trust in this.
Okay.
Absolutely. So thank you, William. And I'm enjoying the anchor in the background. I'm not sure if you have some sort of sea history in the sea, or somebody living close to the sea, but it looks very nice, at least visually. So let's see here. So thank you, William, and anybody who feels free. Do you have anything else to share with us, William, before we perhaps move on?
No, we'll go forward.
Okay. So Karen, Greg brings in this concept of intuition versus instinct, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about this. So just as a recap, he says that intuition is this inner voice that guides us just here now, in so many words. And instinct is this hardwired response for general scenarios. The instinct would tell us not to go down the dark alley, and intuition may override this. So I'm wondering, Karen, what thoughts you have on this and how can we apply it in our day-to-day?
Well, that is interesting because instinct is rather loud. Don't go down that dark alley. It's in that case, it's probably generated from fear or, the basic survival instinct, right? But then when you say intuition might override that and say, no, go ahead, it's okay, go down the dark alley. The thing about intuition is that it's this broader view coming from our whole full self. We don't know what's in the alley. It could be somebody who needs help. It could be something on the ground that we pick up that leads to some next wonderful thing. We just don't know. So trusting our intuition over our instinct, I'm just thinking about it now, of course, seems quite valuable, to contemplate that and allow the intuition to override the instinct and fully trust that intuition is trustworthy.
Yes, and A Course in Miracles has some insight to complement this teaching here. If anybody's familiar with the history of A Course in Miracles and how it has been described by Helen Schuckman, her personal story, she, being the scribe of A Course in Miracles, clearly she was living it, and she was known in her biography, it's written that she would often, at times where there seemed to be a fork or a split, a decision to make, she would close her eyes and just ask, if it's a yes or no, or a right or a left, which way would you have me go? And just listen, and just listening, not hearing, listening for the answer. And it is this simple. And furthermore, A Course in Miracles itself, so it uses this language of Holy Spirit, but we can think of it as just our inner voice. We could think of it as our highest self, or using the language of this module, our heart. A Course in Miracles says that our heart is as loud as we allow it to be. So it can be distracted. We can be distracted by ego. We can be distracted by all sorts of things, which we can lump together as ego or distractions or illusions. But if we are not distracted by them, if we are tuned in through these exercises and through this spiritual practice, then our heart is as loud as we allow it to be. And we can allow it to be fully loud. So really, ideally, we're in this state where just as we've all connected with our heart through this exercise, we can be in this connection eternally. And why would we want anything less than this? Why would we want any point to be separated from our heart? We don't have to be. So our heart is, our intuition is as loud as we allow it to be, and just allowing this guidance to be presented to us. It's allowance can be seen as a passive thing, allowing somebody, but it is also an active thing in this way, allowing our heart to speak to us. We're actively allowing our heart to speak.
I really like that, Tim, because the idea that we can allow our heart to be as loud as it would like to be, it's a wonderful guidance, I would say. Because as I said a minute ago, instinct, the voice of instinct is loud. The voice of habit, habitual response is loud and can override the heart's guidance and intuition. But we have a choice here. We can say, I am going to listen to the heart. That is the most important thing. That's all I want to listen to. We can do that if we choose to.
Yes, we certainly can. And clearly this practice is a way to connecting with this, because as you say, Karen, the instinct, even when it's against intuition, when it's conflicting, instinct seems to be louder. And again, A Course in Miracles says that it's often the loud first voice. It comes in loud and first, but if we quiet ourselves, we take this time to breathe slowly and tune into our heart, then the answer becomes clear, even if this one seemingly quick and loud voice is shouting, don't do that, you'll get hurt. We know, we're tuned into it. Okay, this is the path to take. So.
I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I'm remembering Panache. He's just popped into my head, and I think I heard Panache say that we actually hear that heart's voice first. It's very quiet sometimes, but it comes in. If we could do a rewind, we would always see that it came in first.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And first and always. So it doesn't leave.
Right.
So it's kind of like the signature. It's just always here as the soft, whispering, gentle caress of a flower on the face. And one question, and thank you all for joining us for this conversation. One question from from our chat box. David from the UK asks us, or comments and asks, the challenge might be to find the balance between instinct and intuition. Do you think it is the same then as making the distinction between taking action and letting it flow? And I think so, David. I think these can be seen as complementary. It's kind of this yin and yang concept. But really, if we understand, if we see it as a whole picture, then we don't even need to make these distinctions. That being in the flow, so to speak, sometimes it's like Tai Chi, you're in the flow and you're taking action, you're moving, and sometimes you're not. But this taking action is in the flow when we're in the flow. I don't think we're called to be to put ourselves in trouble or misery or suffering or any sort of troubled state. We're not called to do this. We're called to be in the flow all the time. It may not be comfortable sometimes, but we're in the flow. And so we're in the flow. Sometimes we take action. Sometimes we let something pass. And all the time we're in the flow. So we're kind of transcended between, over and under this concept of being firm and soft and masculine and feminine and all the above whenever we're called to be. Anyway, so thank you for the closing thought, David. And Sue-Ann, thank you for your comments of appreciation of our inner question, which way would you have me go? And so I invite us, I know, I'm not sure actually how many people have actually gone through the Science of Self-Empowerment course, but it's beautiful. And I understand it's a, it costs $297, but we have a free program. If anybody enjoys Greg Braden and would like to see more, or would like to see kind of a further view of this, an extension of this with Bruce Lipton and the Heart Math guys, we do have the free program called Accelerating Your Evolution Through Science that you're welcome to sign up for. And I'm sure in Community Circle, everyone here is a member of Community Circle. You can see plenty of interviews that we have with him and Steve and others in our hub. So Karen, what's our final word for today?
Final word. Find that which gladdens your heart, and only that.
Yes, and let's keep it here.
And only this.
And only this. So enjoy this Sabbath weekend, all. Shalom and on these journeys, peace, rest, and blessings. And thank you. I love you all. God bless.
Everyone.
Shabbat shalom.